It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Tianyi Jiang, co-founder and CEO of AvePoint. AvePoint was founded back in 2001, and TJ has served as the organization's chief executive officer since 2005. A recipient of Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award in New Jersey in 2010, TJ received both Bachelor of Science and Masters in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Cornell University. He also achieved a Master of Philosophy and Ph.D. in Data Mining from Department of Information Systems, Operations Management, and Statistics from the Stern School of Business at New York University. Tianyi Jiang, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Brad.
Great to have you here. We spoke about a month or so ago. The weather's got a little colder, but not a whole lot of snow. And hope you're keeping warm wherever you are today.
Yeah, it's pretty cold in New Jersey right now, but all good.
All good. Yeah, we had a little dusting the other day. I went into the city on Wednesday, saw a little concert at Carnegie Hall, and nice to have a little bit of snow. But once the big snow calms down, I head to the West Coast. But at any rate, I'd love to hear a little bit about your upbringing. Tell us, kind of start at the beginning. What your early family life was like? Where'd you grow up? And, what did mom and dad do?
Yeah. So my parents are researchers. They're research scientists. They are the first. They were one of the first batch of exchange scientists that came to America back in the mid 80s.
Wow, cool.
So my father ended up working at Naval Hospital. Now is Walter Reed.
Yeah.
And my mother worked at a National Institute of Health.
Wow, NIH,
She was in AIDS research. My father was in cancer and then protein research.
Wow.
So I came to America from Beijing at 11 years old in 86.
So did they come over as researchers? I mean, were they in their 20s and still studying, or had they actually been hired in at that level when they immigrated?
They hired in as exchange scientists. So they came in as researchers in their in their 40s.
Yeah, cool.
It's they went through the whole Cultural Revolution thing, and they learned English while my father was all the university kids and all the intellectuals, quote unquote, were sent to countryside for education, right? During the Cultural Revolution. So my father worked in the coal mine.
Retraining. Was it retraining?
Yes, retraining. So he worked in a coal mine for several years, and
oh my gosh.
And that was quite an experience because you know how the safety standards of the coal mines back then. But luckily, because they were both medical school graduates from Beijing University Medical School and one of the best in the country, they were able to then become doctors and look at patients and take care of the coal miners. During much of that time, and they were only allowed to learn Russian.
No kidding.
This is in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, but they were had the foresight to always keep an eye on and learn English on the side and listen to BBC and those broadcasts, and be able to test very well and on language proficiency, and came to America as research exchange scientists.
Fantastic.
So that my success is very much derived on the shoulder of giants who are my parents.
Brothers and sisters, TJ?
I have an older sister,
Older sister.
5 years older than me.
Okay. Oh, so she was already in her late teens then, yeah, 16, 17. Yeah.
So this is the thing, right? Back in the even in the this is 80. My father came here 85.
Right.
Me and my mother came here 86. The the U.S. Embassy wouldn't give my sister a visa, so she stayed behind as a
Oh,
teenager
really?
and
Wow.
started college there.
Yeah.
And then subsequently she came here. She married an American dentist and became a dentist herself. I couldn't be more proud of her. She's now
Mm.
in the National Guard.
Ah.
Um, she she's a dentist in Maryland, and yeah, and in the best shape of her life because National Guards have
Big
they have
training
banding
requirements,
and
right?
training and officer training, and she's trying to become a colonel. So it's awesome.
Oh,
I'm
it's
very, very
great.
proud of my sister.
Well, you came over at 11, so you must have some
Yeah.
memories growing up in China. What part of China were you in when you were raised?
So Beijing.
In Beijing, okay.
So I was actually born in Chengdu, part of Sichuan, the
Sure.
capital of Sichuan,
Hmm.
and I grew up with my grandparents
Okay.
because at that point my parents were the first batch of graduate students to return to school and get a graduate degree after Cultural Revolution.
Right,
So
right,
we
right.
end up, me and six other cousins, including my sister, all grew up in a one-bedroom
Oh
little
my gosh.
under the
Wow.
care of my grandparents, my mother's parents
Mother's parents.
over
Wow.
there. But
Yeah.
quickly my parents graduated, and then they got teaching jobs and research jobs at Beijing University. So I moved to Beijing and started my first grade education
Yeah.
in a local school that's attached to essentially the university. So all the kids
Right.
are university researcher and teachers' kids.
Yeah.
So I did fifth grade there and came to America in '86 and started sixth grade in Bethesda, Maryland,
Now, did
Bradley
you
Hill
speak any
Elementary School.
English at all? Do you have any English studies
No,
before
at
coming
that
over? Oh,
point,
my goodness. Yeah.
they didn't teach English in
Right.
elementary school, so I didn't even know ABC.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
it was really, really tough. I think
Must have
because
been
I was
hard.
top of my class in elementary school in China. I was always a good
Yeah.
student. And then I came to America knowing nothing about the language
My
and
goodness.
obviously massive culture shock. It was the toughest time, I think, in my younger
Yeah.
years to learn English and try to be, earn my marks in school because,
Well, how
I
did you
wasn't
do that? Did you
confident.
get some special tutors? Did you just kind of throw you into the end of the pool and swim to the best of your
It's
ability? I mean,
sink or swim, Brent.
yeah.
Even though my parents are research scientists, but as you know, in bio research in NIH and Naval Hospital, you get paid pretty low
Yeah.
salaries.
Right. Right.
But luckily, I stayed in Bethesda, Maryland. So it's all about location, right? We stayed, shared the very small house with two other families, also research scientists.
Right.
It's kind of a community. But I had the fortune of be located in Bethesda, Maryland, which is one of the best neighborhoods in America.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Most of the diplomats and their diplomatic corps from different countries, they live in those neighborhoods
Right.
because of Washington, D.C.
Of
So I
course.
ended up going to public school and went to the English as a second language ESOL class with
Oh, okay.
some of the diplomatic corps kids. And so
Yeah.
some of my best friends are, for example, kids from the Korean
Right.
diplomatic corps or Argentinian or Indonesian. So
Yeah.
we had a lot of fun. We all learning English together and bonded and had lifelong relations. And that was one of the best thing about growing up in Maryland
That's
and Bethesda,
awesome.
Maryland.
How
Yeah,
long did it take you to get back to straight A's in elementary or middle school?
that's
A
a
year
great
or two at
question.
best, I imagine,
That's a
right?
great question. So I started sixth grade and it was really tough. And starting in the middle school, I worked through that. And then starting ninth grade, I got into all honors. I took all
Wow.
AP classes my school has to offer. I went to Walt Whitman High School. Middle school is Pyle, and Whitman is at the time and still is today one of the best public high
High
school in
schools.
the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was part of the wrestling team. I was part of
Ah.
the chemistry club, physics club, chess club, computer club. A
Right.
typical geek. The only thing non-geek about it was I played saxophone in the orchestra and jazz band, and I did wrestle, for 4 years.
I love
Yeah,
it. Great. Any
yeah.
other outside activities you had time for other than?
Another funny thing is because my parents are, they don't make great income, and I felt so embarrassed the first time I went to a yard sale when I came to
Mm,
America because they took me to a yard sale to buy clothes for me.
oh,
I learned that it was my new classmates. Family were having that yard sale,
gosh.
so the girl in the class was giggling because my mother was trying to buy clothes for me that belonged to her older brother.
Older brother.
I
Yeah.
was so
Mm,
embarrassed. I
mm.
promised myself that I would never go to a single yard sale in my life. I, I got a job right away. So I started delivering newspapers all year round. I rake leaves in the fall, mow lawns in the summer, and shovel snow in the winter. So I
Wow.
started working ever since I was 12 years old. I
Yeah.
never asked a dollar from my parents. All my clothes, all my stuff, I bought myself.
Wow.
And and went to college. I borrowed some money from my parents, and between student loans, grants, and some money, I went to college. The first thing I did after Cornell, got the job and pay off my parents and bought my
Good
own
for
car.
you. Good for you. Fantastic. Well,
Yeah,
sometimes it's those experiences that really do form us, don't they?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think you going through that just I think instills since young that entrepreneurial spirit. I
Yeah.
would not have it any different.
Yeah.
And also, when you're that young, Brand, you don't realize, you don't think it's hardship. It's just something you deal with,
Right.
and
Sure.
you just do it. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I think I enjoy freedom. Nothing beats mowing lawn for somebody to make $20, and at the same time you listen to your Walkman. Listen to Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson. It was the best time of the summer. I
That's
think
great.
those are great
I
years.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Fantastic. And so, you've obviously touched on some of your entrepreneurial activities. It sounded like you certainly had some skills that way. Where do you think you kind of picked that up? Is that something that you learned on your own? Was it something that you kind of learned from others? I mean, you obviously didn't come from that environment. Your parents were teachers and research scientists and so forth. And how did you kind of come across that entrepreneurial DNA, so to speak?
Well, I think since young, because I hated asking my parents, I never wanted to ask them for money. So I just
Right.
worked so that
You
I
saw the
got a taste of
opportunity.
making my own, keep. And
Yeah.
since then, I'm always good at making money, right? To make it. But at the same time, because that my parents are researcher, they had quite high expectation, and I had a high expectation myself. So I always make sure that I go to the good schools, get good grades, and then went to big companies. My first job out of Cornell was Lucent Bell Labs. At that
Yeah.
time, in early '97, it was the most commonly held stock in America.
Yeah.
They just spun out from AT&T. They retained the crown jewel of AT&T, which is Lucent Bell Labs. And I went there and I quickly realized it's just like another telco. And
Yeah.
then I switched over to Wall Street. And Wall Street, it's very exciting, it's thrilling, it's long hours, but you make great money. I think all through that process, I've been learning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had the fortune of made a lifelong friend at Lucent, who's then became my mentor, my co-founder at that point, Kai Gong. And we started this business together after 9/11. 9/11's a life-changing event for all of us.
Yeah.
And my office at Lehman Brothers, 40th floor, North Tower.
Wow.
Um, and everyone on my floor made it. So that's a life-changing event for me. I went
Yeah.
to decide to go to grad school, NYU, to do business school first at Stern, and then switch over to doctorates in data mining and machine learning. And Kai was laid off like most people at Lucent back then, with a burst of internet
Yeah.
bubble at that
2003.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was in grad school. Kai was doing this. He asked me to join him. I started that, and we just kept learning. For me, it wasn't so much about entrepreneurship in the beginning. It was
Yeah.
really just the joy,
Survival.
survival, and the joy of doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And not having to wear someone else's clothes, right? I mean, that's
Exactly.
a pretty basic
Exactly.
deal.
Yeah. One of the
Well,
things I learned at Wall Street was the first time I got the Wall Street job working for Deutsche Bank. That was World Trade Center 5 at the time. And when I first came to America, I was a little kid, and when I went to New York City, I was just absolutely in awe, right? You look at the skyscrapers, it's like
Right.
they touch the sky.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you have to crank your neck and your head to see it.
Yeah.
And I was just in total amazement. And then here I am working in World Trade Center, and I was just so, smug and so happy with myself. And like I made it, from an immigrant, nobody, and now I'm working on Wall Street, writing trading system for Deutsche Bank. And then I remember very vividly my boss at the time say, "Well, the janitor in this building also working World Trade Center." So
That's
from
right.
that point on, I mean, again, no disrespect to the janitors, but from that point on, I just, it's all about what I do, my passion. It doesn't matter where I work.
Yeah.
So that was one of the key lessons I took away from that. So I think throughout the years, I have different mentors and different experiences that directed me this way. There isn't a singular thing that would say, "Hey, I want to be a business person and create my own business."
Right.
I have always been a technical person, writing code, be a
Yeah.
geek, and pursue my passion. And in the early days of AvePoint, it's really about providing value to our customers and, making their job easier, right? With data management things, solving their problems that bring joy to us, and we make a little money on the side. And that's how things started. It wasn't a grand plan of, "Hey, I want to be a CEO of a public company
Right.
someday." That
Right.
never
Right.
crossed my mind in those early
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to AvePoint, but a couple of things I want to, cover up early on. You went to Cornell, great school, decided to, study, mechanical engineering, and then on to NYU
Electrical computer
Stern School of
engineering.
Business. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, got it, got it. What made you choose Cornell? Tell us a little bit about the thought process around going there.
Yeah, so I applied to a bunch of engineering school because again I was decent at math and physics, and I thought I love computer programming. I thought the
Yeah.
best kind of integrated degree would be electrical computer engineering because you do a
Mm.
bit of hardware and software. And Cornell has a great program. I also applied to Johns Hopkins and Northwestern. Got waitlisted at MIT. A little sad about it because at that time I wasn't a citizen nor a green card yet.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
I applied as an international student. Obviously, the competition is even more fierce among international applicants.
Right. Right.
So I went also to visit campus. Fell in love with Ithaca. It's a beautiful place. Not realizing later that it's also the biggest pressure cooker and highest suicide rate in Ivy Leagues.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And
Well, those winters get pretty cold up there. I'm
they
sure that's
do.
got something
They
to do
get
with
very cold.
it.
Cornell and Ithaca is a much beautiful place when you don't have to deal with exams and midterms and finals
Right.
and
Right.
late labs. But no, I really like the environment. So I decided to, yeah, go to Cornell. And ECE is also the highest churn rate program in the engineering school because just a
Right.
lot of pressure. But yeah, have so much fun and great friendship that I formed there with a lot of folks from all over the world, including a lot of scholars from Singapore. Yeah, I enjoyed my experience there, but at the same time, it is a hard program, and those winters get very cold, Brent. Just like you said,
Indeed.
so I couldn't wait
My
to get out of
youngest
there.
daughter went to Dartmouth,
Yeah.
so I know they're
Oh,
big
there you
rival
go.
schools,
Yeah.
and been up to there. She was an athlete as well, so went to Cornell very often. Lovely place, great place to go to school. But those winters do get very cold, no
Oh,
question
I have
about it.
so much respect for college athletes. The amount of dedication and time it takes to keep up with the sport, and then same time you have to keep up your grades
That's right.
in those
Yeah.
top tier schools. It's not easy to do.
No. And then you went on to NYU. Now, I think you got a couple years of work experience first, right? You went to
That's right.
Lucent, and then did you
Yeah.
go to Wall Street before you came back for your
Yes, that's right.
master's? Okay.
So I went to Lucent for a couple years, so 17, 18, and then halfway through 1999. Wow, it's a long
Right.
time ago. So
Yeah.
yeah, I started Lucent January essentially 1997. My goodness. And then yeah, because it's a telco, I felt that it's not as exciting of a place. So I went to Wall Street, became a fixed income program trading coder at Deutsche Bank
Okay.
in late 98.
Yeah.
And then my MD really liked my work, and when he transferred over to Lehman, I went with him, and that was equities equities desk doing program
Right.
trading. Deutsche was bond analytics for the fixed income. So so I was at Lehman. I was doing really well, and really just focused on high frequency type of transaction systems. Support the trading desk because my system was used by them. And then 9/11 happened, and that completely changed my worldview.
Yeah, yeah. How so? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when 9/11 happened, firstly, the story that really resonated with me is at the time there's another coder that joined our team just for less than a week. And he was telling me he got a competing offer from Cantor Fitzgerald in the same building, above 80 plus floor.
Yeah.
And the hiring manager walked him across the entire floor and showed him the view and said, hey, we have the best view in all of Manhattan. And this guy, he always goes to work at 8 o'clock. I always go to work before 9 o'clock. And he made the fateful decision to join Lehman instead of Cantor. And for most of you listeners, you understand that anybody above 80th floor on that day in World Trade Center 1 did not make it out.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's that, that kind of fateful decision that just changes your entire trajectory.
Yeah.
So for me, that was.
Now, were you in the building that day?
I was just trying to cross from the exchange place right across the river.
Right.
When I got there, I already saw it's around 8:30. I saw the first tower have smoke bellowing out from the New Jersey side, looking that way because the plane slammed into the east side. We're looking from the west side.
Right.
You just see smoke, and this is early. And the Twin Towers are massive buildings.
Yeah.
So everyone didn't know what happened. People were saying, "Oh, maybe it's
just
one
a
of the
fire or
traffic
something.
helicopter crash into it,
Right.
a small, plane, and just a fire." The funny thing is at that time, all I can think about is go across the river, go to my cubicle, and get all my computer books because all my books were there.
Right.
And then as I was trying to figure out how to cross because path is closed and they shut off the ferry, and then I several hundred people along the water, including some of my coworker at that point that trying to cross too, saw the second plane hit the South Tower.
Yeah.
And it was a clear, cloudless, blue sky day.
Yeah.
The weird thing was, it's like a scenery out of the Spielberg movie, and none of us recall hearing the sound. Which can be possible. You must, it's such a large explosion. We would hear the sound. I think it was just the visual
was
so unreal and shocking.
Yeah.
And of course, within seconds, you hear the the fighter jets, right? The F-15s flying overhead, and all of our pagers were going off, right? Pentagon, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And you just felt like we're at war, and everyone started to run away from the water. I grabbed the first cab because I lived right along the water, so I can just walk back to my place. But I grabbed the first cab available and got my coworker in there and got him home. And as I was walking back to my apartment, because you see the building on fire with smoke, and I thought that was it. But then, as I was walking back, the people that are still facing and watching the tower, I see them crying. I'm like, what's going on? And I turn around, one of the tower was gone.
Yeah.
So that was an incredible,
traumatic
shocking,
experience.
humbling, beyond, words experience for anyone that went through that, right?
Absolutely.
So for me, I decided that, life is, you never know. Today you're here, tomorrow you don't know where you are. I need to change the trajectory of my life. I don't need to be working for the biggest company, just making good money, but then became so specialized. All I know is how to code high frequency trading systems.
So what did you do? What was your next step? How did you, you had to kind of digest it all. It was all a very, very difficult thing for not just Americans, people all over the world, but how did that kind of impact your career path?
So first thing I thought about was, hey, I need to go back to school and become more well-rounded again. When we were in
Mm,
middle school, high school, we were doing everything, right? Doing sports,
yeah,
doing instruments, learning history,
right,
much more well-rounded than when you're just be a high frequency, trading system coder on Wall Street.
right,
So
right.
I wanted to regain that kind of sense of balance again.
Mm,
So first thing I did was applying for a Langoon program. I actually applied for it right before 9/11. So so that's a part-time business program. It's one of the best part-time program in the country.
right.
Um, and then after I finished the core, which is the first year classes, I decided to switch over to the full-time doctorate program offered
Mm,
by Stern in
yeah.
the information operation and statistics department. They have a really good program in data mining and machine learning. This is before
Hmm.
McKinsey made big data the term in 2010. I decided to enroll in the PhD program.
Did you think you'd go and study or go and teach, or did you, know that you'd go back to business at the time, or you weren't really sure?
I wasn't really sure. That was
Yeah,
actually, Brent, one of the hardest decision I
can
had to make,
imagine. Yeah, yeah,
because I was making great money on Wall Street, and all of a
right.
sudden, you go from that to, as a doctor student, you go to no money, a little stipend, right? But New York City is not a cheap city to live in.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, and luckily for me, because I was one of the lead programmer on the trading system, Lehman still asked me to go back in, 1 or 2 days a week on great Wall Street consulting rates. So I was busy, but I was
Right.
doing well. But I had no, of course my parents are academics. My father always wished me to go that route. So one path is, hey, do your doctorates and become a professor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my friend Kai started this business. He asked me to check it out, and initially I was hesitant. I did internships at Moody's. After my qualifying exam at the doctor program, I did a 6-month stint at the quant desk at Citadel in
Right.
Chicago.
Yep.
I tried different things, right? I wanted
Yeah.
to figure out what I want to do, and finally I say, okay, Wall Street really isn't for me. I just, my interest is not to how to compute and try to make a more optimized trading decision. Rather, this business that my good friend Kai started, that's interesting,
Yeah.
because everything's new. I have to do marketing, I have to do sales,
Yeah.
I have to call customers, I have to support, I have to do pre-sales. It's because it's just me and him.
What was the original premise behind AvePoint? What were you trying to meet? What consumer need were you trying to meet?
So both of us are enterprise technology solution coders, right? So
Right.
all we knew was B2B. We knew nothing about B2C. So
Yeah.
we say, hey, why don't we do something that we both knew? And he knew Microsoft Exchange very well. So he
Mm.
said, hey, why don't we get into just do backup, backup for Exchange. Even at that point, 2001, 2002, that space is pretty crowded, but still, it's a big space, right?
Yeah.
So Kai, he got laid off by Lucent, so he worked at this public library in Somerville, New Jersey, for 2 years. I mean, he didn't work there; he just coded there every day, so
Right.
everybody knows him.
Yeah.
So he just out of pocket, no income, just did that. So he coded this program. I, help him promote it, etc. And that back then you have to, distribute and sell things on CDs, and nobody would buy product from a man and a half in Somerville, New Jersey, on CDs. So we sold nothing, made no money.
Wow.
At the same time, though, Microsoft released this thing called SharePoint. It used the same
Yep.
backup format as Exchange. So we understand the data structure. We say, hey, maybe we just support this thing, even though nobody's using it. At least, there may be a possibility. So we switched over to that, and very quickly, Microsoft released the second version, which is in 2003,
Mm.
called SharePoint, V2, basically SharePoint 2 on 3. And we went to their biggest trade show, which is called TechEd in Orlando. We got a little folding table with a cloth and
Hmm.
just, hey, we back up SharePoint. Even then, nobody really paid attention to us at the show. But what really happened to us, the big, to be successful in entrepreneurship, you have to work hard, but you also have to be lucky. So
That's
our
right.
luck came in that we went to this session. I went to this session. Called a migration workshop. So Microsoft say, we have a new version of this product. By the way, there's no migration from the previous version because, we hear a lot of feedbacks and most of you don't like the previous version. The previous version is flat file, new version is just SQL, relational database, completely different schema, different metadata, completely different. So, and we couldn't be bothered to just, do a migration path. It's just too hard.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it. Just use the new version. Of course, their biggest customer and partners, which is HP, Dell, they were up in arms. They were quite upset. Like, hey, we believe in you. We use your first version. You leave us high and dry. Like, how do we migrate our user to the second version? So at that time, we didn't have a product, but I knew we could do it because we knew this data format, the schema for both versions.
Right.
So I stood in the room. I raised my hand and said, hey, we can migrate you. Come to our booth. And then right away, I printed these flyers, posted all over the conference in Orlando Convention Center, say, hey, AvePoint has a migration path from 2001 to 2003 version. And everybody came over.
Everybody showed up. Oh, fantastic.
And even though we didn't have a product yet, including the head of Microsoft SharePoint program, Jeff Teeper, who's actually now a board member at AvePoint, but he's also known as a godfather of SharePoint because him and his team developed SharePoint.
Right.
He's now the global head of SharePoint, OneDrive, as well as Teams. So a very senior individual on the research side, engineering side at Microsoft.
Right.
So he came over and said, do you guys have a product? We're like, yeah. So he said, well, come and show me next week in Redmond.
Wow.
And because, they have to see something before they can recommend us.
Of course.
So over the weekend, we coded the product.
I love it.
And then Kai, at this point, he was bootstrapping everything, right? And made no money for 2+ years. His wife booked him the cheapest connecting flight from Newark to Seattle. And he also was so poor that he didn't have a laptop. So he carried his desktop towers with him.
Oh, my gosh.
And went to Redmond, plug in a monitor, showed it to the team. They're like, oh, wow, okay, it works. So we'll recommend our partners and customer to you.
Wow.
And then Jeff's like, hey, by the way, why did you bring a desktop tower here? He was so embarrassed about it. He had to tell a white lie. He's like, yeah, my laptop broke. So I brought my computer tower instead.
Oh, goodness.
But, that's how it works in the enterprise B2B, right? It's reputation-based.
Yep,
it's reference-based.
Yeah.
And
that sets you on your way.
That set us on our way. But, from then on, we were known to be the company that always bite off the toughest thing to chew. We do the hardest thing that people don't want to do, but also with quality. So very quickly, we picked up PSENG, right? We picked up obviously Dell, HP, and even I remember, SOCOM, U.S. Army Special Operation Command, the first really serious government customer we picked up, and we just never looked back. And we always focused on large enterprise, B2B. We expanded from data migration to data backup, archiving, compliance, data privacy, and governance. And then another big break that came for us was in 2010 when Microsoft first started to cloud, and Steve Ballmer was still the CEO.
Yeah.
And everyone say, oh, Microsoft stock hasn't moved for 10 years. Microsoft's done. Google is the new thing. They're the king of software. And, but we saw that the cloud thing is real. And Microsoft still have all these tremendous footprint in enterprise customers. And we say, we got to go to cloud. And also lucky for us, this thing SharePoint that we became the biggest data management provider for is the middleware for all of Microsoft Office Cloud, Office 365.
Wow.
So today, if you share any document via email or Teams, internally, externally, if you want to do co-authoring, version control, you have to go through this middle layer that's called SharePoint. Right. And because we were the biggest globally, and we had to establish footprint globally because SharePoint is only used by biggest companies and governments because it's big, sophisticated, clunky. Right. We had that global footprint. So then we went to cloud early. We went into 2010. Head in. I remember we went to a Microsoft partner conference, and I say we have to figure out as a company how to make money in the new world of $1 a user a month.
Subscription.
And this is 2011. People are like, how do you make money $1 a user a month when we were selling perpetual software, right? And on a CD at that time, right?
Right.
For tens of thousands, hundreds of $1,000s in one go, But we were early. We believed in that where Microsoft's heading. And now fast forward to today, we're the largest SaaS and data management platform provider for Microsoft Office 365 because we did it early.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So how many employees today? You and Kai started this back 16 years ago, right? February of 2005. And how many today? How many employees and what's your footprint?
Well, we officially incorporated the company back in 2001.
Okay. All right.
For 3 years, we didn't make any money. I became full-time 2005 because by that point, I'm pretty much done with my doctorate.
Yeah.
I was half-timing, right? I was doing school. I was working. Sure. It's kind of like the out of the dorm room story, except it's years I was living in my own house. Now we have just under 1,700 employees globally. Fabulous. In 14 countries, 28 offices.
Gosh, fantastic.
45% of our revenue is in North America, and the rest of it is evenly split between Western Europe and Asia. And by Asia, we talk about tier 1 enterprise software markets. That's Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong. We're truly global.
Fabulous success story. Now, you made the decision to go public. Was that a difficult thing for you guys to do? And what year was that again?
Brad, the only regret I have today is that we haven't gone public earlier.
Yeah, is that so? Yeah.
Yeah. We should have gone public back in 2010 when we were already like, $60 million revenue company.
Yeah.
And that's pre-cloud. Today, we're under 200 million revenue this year, and it's all SaaS, right? 80% is software recurring, 20% services. We decided to go public essentially last summer. The impetus behind that is we went through 4 years of a long journey called subscription conversion. Went from traditional license, perpetual model plus maintenance to a subscription model. For those listener that doesn't know the software market that well, it's a very big change. Yeah, so the old model is I sell you a CD, I sell you a software for $100. But because you're a company, you want to call me for support. You want to get latest software updates, right? We're not like Google. You do something with Gmail and you will never reach a human being for support, right?
Right.
So then what enterprises would do is they will pay what's called a maintenance contract. They would do a 3-year contract with you, and on average, it will pay you 20% of the software, right? So 20. So the total contract is $160. The upfront payment is $100 for the software, and then $20 for the support for year 1. Year 2 comes around, they pay $20. Year 3 come around, $20. So total $160. That's the traditional model.
Right.
In the subscription model, especially SaaS, you're getting paid as you consume. Right. So that same 160, let's say a 3-year contract, becomes essentially 160 divided by 3, right? So it's like $53 per year. So in year 1, you said $120, you get $53.
Yeah.
And that's a huge cash crunch.
Right.
When you're, as a software company, you have no warehouses, you have no supply chain issue. Your cost is your employees. Right?
Same, yeah, right.
So that it's almost like fixed cost.
Yeah.
So how do you transition from that big cash crunch is the biggest challenge all software companies go through. Adobe went through that very successfully. Splunk is going through the pain now. It's literally like a U-shaped curve, right? From a revenue cash perspective. We decided to do it on our own without borrowing money. At that point, Goldman Merchant Banking was our Series B investor. Similar size revenue companies would borrow $70 million just to do it, to alleviate the cash crunch. We decided to do it in phases, tighten our belt, and just go because we're just fiscally conservative. Brent, we built this business with just $60 million primary capital, no debt.
Right.
And now we're high growth. It just,
So the whole regret about if you'd done it earlier, you would have had access to public money. You could have done that conversion so much faster. Yeah.
We could have gotten access to capital. We couldn't grow faster.
Right.
And another thing that I'm learning as a public company CEO is that being a public company forces you to have so much more discipline on a much faster cadence. That's why, the founder of TIBCO famously said, the best companies were born in the crucibles of being a public company.
That's right.
So every quarter, right? And research analysts, institutional investors, they're very, very smart. They have very sophisticated models. And you cannot hide behind one number. They look at every single metrics. It forces you to be so transparent, so honest, and so disciplined with yourself and with the entire business. Yeah. There's really no hiding, right? There's no slacking. So I think that's a fantastic discipline for any company. Yeah. So anyway, we decided to go last summer because we went through the subscription conversion 19, 20. Despite COVID, even though we didn't increase headcount because of COVID, our revenue continued to grow 30%, right? Year over year. So we just announced our 11th consecutive record quarter.
Congratulations.
So all based on no really additional capital. When we did a Series C with Sixth Street Partners, it's really just to exit our Series B partner. We didn't really have new capital.
Yeah, right.
So all of a sudden we say, hey, this is really interesting. We're growing really well. We have proven the success and predictability and consistency of a subscription business model. We're cash generating. And of course, during last year, also the tech markets start to really have good valuations. And this digital transformation thing is really well vetted. And Microsoft is just killing it, right? Microsoft Cloud, the ecosystem, all of that.
Teams is so much better than Zoom. Right. I know from experience.
You can do so much more, right?
Exactly.
Beyond just video call, you can chat, you can share content, you can do projects. So that's where we say, hey, we're actually the number one SaaS and data management player in the Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah.
And let's go leverage capital markets and grow faster, because if we continue to constrain ourselves from a capital perspective, we won't grow as fast. But we have a first mover advantage, we have a platform advantage, and the market is so big. We should go after it, because every company has only a finite window of opportunity. Right. So that's when we decided to go public. Yeah, and we actually went the route of traditional IPO to start. I put together with my team a bulge bracket bank syndicate with Goldman Sachs, Citi, Evercore, and we were going to do the traditional IPO. And Brent, you remember this time last year, summer last year, SPAC, right? Special purpose acquisition corporations are all the rage. It's something crazy, like 80% of IPOs were done via SPAC.
That's right.
Because, bankers call it SPAC technology 3.0, right?
Right.
I love banker lingo, right? So it's safe, it's good, it's a new way. And so we had to, even for me to have my fiduciary duty to my shareholders and board, I have to check out SPAC as an option. So we talked to a number of them, high quality sponsors, and we end up finding Apex Technologies. It's more like they found us. So it was Brad Koenig, who made Goldman Sachs tech banking what it is today. His first IPO, incidentally, was Microsoft. And then Jeff Epstein, who is the ex-CFO of Oracle, who sits on big tech public boards like Okta, Twilio. So they both have capital markets and operations experience. So we found them to be fantastic individuals to help us. And secondly, obviously, in the certainty of a SPAC, in that there's $350 million in the trust of their SPAC, Apex Technologies. We also, within 4 weeks, landed Tiger, Franklin Templeton, Federated Kaufman, really good institutional traditional IPO investors in what's called a PIPE process, 140 million, and a certain valuation. And this is already October last year. You remember, this is right before election results. There were no vaccines yet. There are a lot of uncertainty in the market. Yeah. So for us to get to that certainty in valuation and certainty to capital, $490 million, was very valuable.
Pretty exceptional. Yeah. Well, TJ, we're almost out of time, but I want to talk a little bit about leadership and get some perspective on that. What's kind of the biggest leadership shift that you've made over these last, 16, 20 years you've been running AvePoint?
Yeah, leadership, it's something that it's so important. I have when I first started, I never, first managing people, it's always, I'll just do it for them.
Right.
I would.
Right.
That's not a good thing. I think we have to give people room to grow,
Right.
or at the senior leadership level, give them enough rope to hand themselves, kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Give people enough room to kind of blossom and grow into their role. So delegation is very important.
Yeah.
But ultimately, though, for me at my current stage, it's all about execution.
Yeah.
So, even the biggest plan on paper, when put in reality, it's not worth anything, because it's all about how the market reacts to your strategy and how you have to execute in real time to a conclusion. So I think execution, especially for a global company like us, we operate in so many geos, so many languages, so many regulatory climate. It's making sure that we provide real value to our partners and customers.
Yeah.
So focus on execution at the leadership level. It's the most critical at this
super
juncture.
important. Yeah. You've hired a lot of people. You've obviously grown, tremendously over these last years. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire, TJ?
We look for people who really have big aspirations, who are not happy with just a status quo. We want people who are dreamers, who are hungry, who wants to be CEOs themselves.
Yeah.
We have, for example, we're in 14 countries. We have country managers who are effectively, their own
Running their own
CEOs in their
business.
business.
Yeah.
So the best is you have to empower your leadership so that they can benefit from the growth, the wealth creation, and therefore, bringing the organization as a whole to the next level. So the people we're looking for are people who have self-drive, who are not just 9-to-5 corporate employees, who are actually entrepreneurs in their own rights.
Right. Cool. Well, our last question, we ask this of all our guests, is, what kind of career and life advice would you give someone who, maybe has their eyes on a corner office and wants to be a CEO themselves someday, or, an entrepreneur like you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think don't play safe. Pre 9/11, I would say my life was playing safe.
Yeah.
Even though I was a bit of entrepreneur, I always do work and always good at making money.
Right.
I always wanted to go to good school, good program, brand name companies. But after even like 9/11, it's, you don't play safe. Life is too short. Do what you're passionate about and go try different things. And if you fail fast forward. And, it's do things that interest you. And we all have to be lifelong learners now in this world we live in. There's no more distinct and concrete set of lives where you just retire and don't do anything, don't do any learning. I think it's really, just don't be afraid, and you got nothing to lose. I think there's so much opportunity where we live now. We live in the golden age of technology, of economic opportunity. Of course, there's a lot of chaos and volatility, but that's where the opportunity comes. So I think, don't hesitate and don't have analysis paralysis, and, and just go for it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, TJ Jiang, CEO and co-founder of AvePoint, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you, Brad. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.